Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the YouTube Slacker Central. Not Vanessa. Vanessa hasn't done anything wrong. I've just, yeah, as you will have noticed, not as many videos going up recently. I'm not sure whether that's a long-term change and whether that is just going to be the norm from now on, or if I'll get back into like a crazy level of productivity. Knowing me, I'll probably have like a 6 month stretch of, being crazy productive again, and then another few months where I'm not as much. But thank you for clicking on the video if you have. I know engagement is less when you're uploading less, so I appreciate everybody who is watching this. And today, Chris isn't here, even though he has listened to this album. So sorry, Chris. But since we did the Wilco ranking together, I thought the best course of action would be to bring Vanessa back and discuss the newest album that came out a week ago today,
Yep.
Cousin. Of course, those of you that will have seen my community post, I went to see Wilco in Edinburgh, and they didn't play any new songs for that. They played the single Evicted, which was cool. But I was hoping I might get a sneak peek, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. We may, like we did with Blur and Depeche Mode, we may make reference to how our rankings may have changed. But yeah, Vanessa, I'm going to hand it over to you. How are you, and what did you think of this new Wilco album?
Well, I am good, thank you. I liked it enough to buy it. So there's one indication.
Really,
Actually,
really cool album art, isn't it? I
yes,
really
I love the album art. Actually I loved it, to be honest. I've heard it 5 times in the last week. So I've had some time to get into the songs and get into the vibe of the album. And I just think that it's a step up from several of the last few for me. I mean, I really liked Cruel Country, but I felt it a bit long. Like some the highlights on Cruel Country are amazing, and they get better with time. But as a full album listen, this is nice and concise for me, and I think it's the perfect length, and it's so easy to put on, and that's one thing I really like about it. And there's enough variety in it. I know a lot of people have been criticizing it for being samey, and I don't hear that at all. I feel like there's variety between every song. I feel like every song has its distinct identity. Like I don't really get that criticism. I especially having heard it so many times. But there's like all these cool textures and things about it. I New things that excite me every time I hear it, which that you don't always hear that. And like especially the way that we listen to music, to listen to one album 5 times in one week, that does say a lot. I don't do that very often. So yeah, it's a 9 for me. It's almost a 10 actually. I love it. Like, and the more I listen to it, the more I love it. And like it's hard to even pick a favorite song. Like sometimes it's Soldier Child, sometimes it's meant to be at the end, sometimes it's Pittsburgh, and like I don't know. Like, and also like sometimes I love a bowl and a pudding, like the best. It's hard for me to pick which one is my favorite. And I think like it opens perfectly. The opener is fantastic. It sets the scene for the album. It sounds like an opener. And I also think the closer is perfect because it sends it off on this triumphant kind of note. So I
I
don't
also occasionally like a bowl and a pudding, and the Wilco song is also pretty good too.
know.
Ha ha ha. Oh, you guys have missed me so much, I know. So for my review, I have not heard it 5 times. I think I'm going to be going a bit more on first impressions. I am going to be hearing this album again. Obviously, we're both big Wilco fans, so it's natural that we're going to be giving this multiple listens. Even if we thought it was not great, we'd be thinking, I need to hear it more to like get it.
Yeah.
But I'm not as high on it as you, but I do think it's really good, and I do also think that the criticism calling it samey is nonsensical. Um, Infinite Surprise, of course, opens the album, and I think it reminds me a lot of like Handshake Drugs from Ghost is Born. It reminds me of Art of Almost from The Whole Love. Again, being an opener, it kind of gives me that same vibe. It has this awesome layered instrumentation, this sort of barraging momentum that feels really relentless. Cool, subtle guitar parts. And, it has been spoken that there are not just Nels Klein, but both guitarists in this band, lead guitarists in this band, are fantastic and are so talented. And with both Cruel Country and this album, and, the albums that came before, basically since like Wilco, the album, they've been quite restrained into doing some quite subtle guitar work, um, which is a pro and a con. I think that some of the little guitar licks and flourishes are so beautiful. And on this opening track, sometimes quite unhinged, which really works well. But I just wish there are a couple guitar solos on here, which I will point out, but I just wish there was a bit more of that because you've got Nels Klein, who is a nutcase in the best way possible. And I wish that Infinite Surprise had a bit more of a defined climax. It just does kind of peter off and end after it builds and builds and builds. Maybe, that's probably what they were going for. But for me personally, that's what I was wanting out of the song. Maybe I'll feel differently on a second listen. 10 Dead, I really like. It has this sort of like post Flower Power depressed psychedelia sound, like the Velvet Underground did so well, especially on their self-titled album. I really love the instrumental, and I don't really think Tweedy's vocals and lyrics are the best on this song, but the instrumental is so good that I've listened to the song a few times just for the instrumental. I think it's really good. My favorite song on the album is actually Leve, which is it's just beautiful. It has that propelling bass part that I've talked about that I'm always a sucker for. See Neil Young's Hurricane or Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. That sort of like doom, doom, doom. It's sort of just very simple, but gives it this sort of hypnotic feeling. Again, the guitar parts are so intricate and beautiful, and it's just so it feels so natural, which I really like. Evicted is cool. It was the single. It's pretty good when they did it live. I don't think it's outstanding, but I don't think it's sort of out of place on the album. I wouldn't have picked it as a lead single, but it's a good song. Sunlight Ends reminds me of The Whole Love, with the sort of electronica touches, which obviously works for me because I love The Whole Love. Um, it also writing wise feels reminiscent of Cruel Country. The style of music is very different from that album at times, but I think the mood of the songs and the style of writing is quite similar, which kind of makes sense that it's come out so soon after that album. It's sort of, I think a lot of the songs were recorded during those sessions, but they obviously didn't fit this sort of country album vibe, and they probably didn't want to make a triple album either, which I think was wise. Bowl and a Pudding takes things in a folkier direction with almost like an Eastern flavor to it, which I really like. Feels quite different to what I'd expect from the band, which I really do appreciate. And honestly, my least favorite song is probably the title track, which was a single. It doesn't work for me. It's a bit stilted. It doesn't really have enough of a melodic presence in the verses. I think the percussion is quite annoying. It just sort of, it's kind of relentless, but not in a good way. But I do think the album ends. I think the last three songs are all good. Pittsburgh amps up the folkiness again, but it has that sort of sweet fuzz for good measure, very sort of Via Chicago esque. The instrumental break is beautiful as well. That is one of the songs where they really get to stretch their legs, the guitarists, and really show off. And then, yeah, the last two songs, you kind of alluded to it. It's a very dark and depressing album for a lot of it. The subject matter, especially like 10 Dead, like just the title alone. But Soldier Child and Meant to Be have this sort of a bit of a spring in their step, a bit of a more endearing and upbeat musical style, at least. Soldier Child has this sort of tropical feel. It's the closest thing to a positive song you get to this point in the album, despite the depressive lyrics, and lovely guitar solo from Nels Klein. Very jazzy, very cool. And then, yeah, Meant to Be is probably my second favorite on the album behind Leve. It's yeah, it just has this sort of lift the spirits vibe. I love the propelling rhythm, and the laid instrumentation gives the song a real sense of grandeur, which I appreciate. So yeah, I would go 8 out of 10. I think it's a low 8 for me, but I haven't really listened to enough from this year, so maybe it still creeps into my top 5 of the year. It's definitely my top 10. I think between the sort of like, you got the jangliness of Leve and sort of the more rocking songs, you got some electronica, some folkiness, and that remnants of that country sound from Cruel Country. There is a lot going on here. And I do think that when I listen to it more, I will unlock some of the layers of it. I think right now, in terms of the ranking, I would put it below, just a spot below Cruel Country and just above Ghost is Born, I think is where I would put it, which I know a few people, Dylan CV being one of them, not happy about that placement, but that's how I feel. I think it's a really great album,
Yeah.
especially coming right off the back of Cruel Country, which I also thought was great. I don't think the highs on this are as high as that, but obviously this isn't a double album. So I think they're at quite a similar level for me. Just very different albums and hard to compare. And I've
Yeah.
had more time with Cruel Country. So we'll see how this grows on me over time if it does. But I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think it's a very consistent album listen, maybe more so than Cruel Country was for me, where that one had some major highlights, but like as a full piece, I feel like
Yeah.
I just throw this on and I have nothing that's really a low point. I mean, there's stuff I prefer over other parts, but like I don't even know if there's like a song where I'm like, well, this is a low point in the album. Like I think it's pretty consistent with highs, you know. So I don't know. I'm really happy with it. Like it's
Yeah, I think the thing with Cruel Country as well is that, like, there are so many great songs on it. It's not like the level of quality is not that great, but as an album listening experience, all of the Blair tracks are in like the first 9 songs or so. So
yeah,
it's like getting to the great stuff takes a while, which is a bit not ideal, but
yeah,
I don't know. I have a soft spot for that album. So I'd probably just give it the edge over this one for now. We'll see how that
yeah.
changes. So has anything changed about your Wilco ranking? I'm
Oh my
intrigued.
gosh. So without turning this into this like a whole new ranking video, I've tried to fit this in sort of within what I had, even if it's not necessarily the most accurate to how I feel now. My top is the same, I'd say, except that my ratings are higher. Like I have 4 10s now instead of one. And like, it's my feelings have grown in a positive direction, but like I had the whole love too low. I can acknowledge that. And I had Schmilko way too high. So like, but I don't want to switch around the whole thing. So I'd slate this within that original ranking around sixth, just behind A Ghost is Born. But it's kind of like they could flip because it's this one I can see really growing. Like there's something really, I don't know, there's something about it that I really love. So it could grow with time. But it's definitely my top 5 of the year, which is a big deal because I've listened to 312 albums this year. So that's that's
For
saying
context, I've listened to 36.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And especially in the context of this year, a lot of those 312 I obviously have not listened to 5 times. Well, maybe my
yeah.
number one, which is the Cutworms self-titled album. But beyond that, I don't know if I've even listened to any of the other ones as much. So
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, there you go. What do you think of Wilco's cousin? Well, the album, not the cousin of the band Wilco. Um, be very interested to hear what you think. I'd be also interested to hear if anybody who follows the channel saw Wilco on their most recent tour. It was a really great show. And anybody who hasn't seen them, if you can, which I know is not possible for everybody, go see them. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for your patience. Videos will come eventually. Uh, the album of the year and song of the year videos will continue. I think next up is going to be Ice House songs after this video, and then yeah, you guys know I'm trying, and eventually more videos will come out, and hopefully they'll be worth it. Thanks, Vanessa, for joining me, and hopefully we will catch you soon.